To add to the discomfort of this video, I am filming on a day where it is hotter than the actual sun in my apartment. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through some books that I really enjoyed, even though they're not the usual thing that I would read. These are some horror books, these are some thrillers, some non-fiction. And when you come to my channel, you usually expect to see me reading a romance or a chick lit or something light and fluffy. So if I started talking about these, you'd probably think you ended up in the wrong place. First one on the list is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyenkan Braithwaite. This really grabbed me. I read this last October as an audiobook, and the audiobook is such an immersive experience. It's so well narrated and it genuinely did grasp me the entire story. This book is about Korede, who is a nurse at a hospital in Nigeria, and her sister Ayola is a little bit of a troublemaker, to say the least. Her sister has a habit of killing her ex-boyfriends. This is the third time that Korede has been called over to her sister's apartment to help to get rid of the evidence. One day when Ayola comes to visit Korede for lunch, she meets Teddy, who is one of the doctors working in the hospital. Ayola pretty much falls for Teddy straight away, and they start dating and they start going out together, and Korede knows that this means a ticking time bomb for Ted's life, basically. Korede has also always had a crush on Teddy, so her now goal is to save his life, to make sure that her sister doesn't end up in jail, and to keep everything ticking over. I genuinely really loved this. It's so different to everything that I would usually read that I don't know what it was that I loved about it so much. I think it was the portrayal of kind of familial duty and having to be there for your family, even in situations where you really don't want to be there for them. I genuinely loved this. Next is the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. These are translated from the Japanese, and they are all based around a tiny little cafe in a back alley in Tokyo where you can go in, you can order a cup of coffee, and you can travel back in time. You can see somebody who has already been to the cafe, whether that is your sister or your husband or a friend who you haven't left it on great terms with. However, this comes with a couple of stipulations. The person that you are visiting has to have been to the cafe before, as I said, and there is a time limit. You have to return to the present before the coffee that you've ordered gets cold, or you will end up in a pretty sticky situation. I don't usually read a lot of kind of sci-fi elements in books, so I was a little bit surprised as to how much this one had really affected me, but it is the heart of the stories themselves that just really sucked me into this. The stories are so well told. They have so much heart to them. Honestly, I ate this book up whole. There are 4 books in the series. The 4th one is just coming out at the end of September this year, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Next is one that really you would not expect me to enjoy. This is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent, and it is like if there was a book made out of Room by Emma Donoghue and Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. The book is following Sally Diamond, who has basically been a recluse for most of her life, and when she was younger, her father told her that when he died, he just wanted to be brought out with the rubbish. This does happen. Her father passes away, and Sally brings him out to her family's farm incinerator, but this kickstarts an entire look back into Sally's life, her upbringing, her real childhood, and how she came to live with her adoptive family to begin with. It also spans across the entire globe, it spans across a couple of decades, and genuinely, it kept me guessing every single page that I read. There is so much to discover about this book. There is genuinely so much to read and to think about from here. I was hooked on it. Because I am not a big horror reader, you wouldn't really expect me to have enjoyed a Stephen King book, but there is one that I have read, and so far, it's still the best Stephen King book I've ever read. I completely loved 11/22/63. This is about Jake, who was sent back to about 1959-1960 with the task to prevent the assassination of JFK. As he is sent back to Maine, he has to go all the way down to Dallas, and while he is there, he gets different odd jobs, he meets with different people, he falls in love. I loved this. I think a time travel book is just something that speaks to me, as you can tell with Before the Coffee Gets Cold. There's just an aspect of time travel that I really enjoy. But there was something else about this as well. The book is really long. I will say that. It's about 750 pages. So it is quite long, but it didn't feel like a slog at any stage of reading it. I was enjoying it the whole way through. Another sci-fi book that I really enjoyed but didn't expect to enjoy so much is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is about 3 students, Tommy, Ruth, and Kathy. Kathy is the one telling you the story. And it tells you about their time in Hailsham, a British boarding school, the situations that they had gone through while they were there, and their lives having left the school. And it is only when they are out, when they've left the school, that they realise what their lives were like and how much of a shit show it really was. I was kind of plodding through this book for a really, really long time. And then I got to about 100 pages in. And that's when you realise something about this book, you realise something about the school, and it just flipped it on its head. I could not put the book down after that. I just had to keep going. I had to keep reading. I had to learn more. I completely loved this book. I haven't read any more from Kazuo Ishiguro. I still have a couple of his books on my eye. I know that there's been so many great things said about Clara and the Sun, but this was a really great introduction. Next up is The Appeal by Janice Hallett, and I kind of started this one with no expectations at all. I just thought I would pick this up one evening after work. It was about 7 in the evening, and I will just get through as much as I can before I go to make dinner. And that ended up with me still sitting on my chair at about 1 in the morning, having not put this book down until I finished it. The book follows a dramatic society in a small English town who are putting on one of Arthur Miller's plays. It's not The Crucible, I can't think of the actual name of it. But the theatre kind of takes a turn when the director, his granddaughter, is diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and they are tasked with fundraising for her. The show is going to go towards her treatment, and there is also a murder in the community. Now, you are given all of the information that you need to solve this murder, along with 2 law students, Charlotte and Femi, who are reading through transcripts, who are reading through interviews, who are reading through phone calls between all of the members of this dramatic society. And when you have all of these documents in front of you, you have to try and figure out who has been murdered, why, who knows more than they're letting on, and who it was that murdered them in the first place. This hooked me so much. It was such a fantastic introduction to Janice's writing. I have read The Alberton Angel since, and I didn't love it as much as I did the first one, but I am very hopeful that The Christmas Appeal is going to go right back up to the top slot. A romance that was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I still really enjoyed it, is Your Dad Will Do by Katie Robert. I had never read a Katie Robert book before because I had heard that her books were incredibly explicit, and that was not incorrect. This book is about Lizzie, who catches her boyfriend Shane in bed with another woman, and she enacts her revenge by spending an entire weekend in bed with his dad. I really enjoyed this. It was fun for what it was. It was fun for a book that's about 4 hours long on an audiobook. It was very much no plot, just vibes. And I think that is just what I needed at the time. I think I just needed a book that I didn't have to think about. It was basically just 2 people having sex all the time. I will say I didn't love the ending of this. There were a couple of things that I didn't gel with. There were a couple of things that happened that I wish didn't happen. But overall, I had a really great time with this one. A kind of literary fiction book that was out of my comfort zone, but I still enjoyed, if that's the right word you can use, is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is following Vanessa, who 15 years ago was a student in a relationship with her teacher Staines. And now, as Vanessa is an adult, things are coming to light about Staines, how she wasn't the only student that he had had some kind of sexual relationship with. And she doesn't see anything that happened between them as a bad thing. She doesn't see it as non-consensual. She doesn't see it as the assault or the rape that the media is portraying it to be. It was so interesting to see it all from Vanessa's point of view, to kind of watch things fall into place for her and to watch her realize what had happened to her when she was younger. I don't know if I can say that I enjoyed this book, but it really heavily stuck with me. I still think about it quite a lot. I don't think it's one that I could ever reread because it's such a heavy book, but it was a really great read at the time. Finally, a non-fiction book that is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but that I still really enjoyed, is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This book was everywhere. last summer. You couldn't move and somebody was reading it or listening to it or talking about it. And I will admit, I didn't have a whole lot of experience with Jeanette McCurdy before I read this. I had seen a couple of episodes of iCarly, but that was a little bit after my time. I'd heard about Sam and Kat, but I'd never really seen her work. It was still such an interesting insight to what life was like behind the scenes on the Nickelodeon set. You do hear a lot of things about the creator, you do hear a lot of things about Dan Schneider and what he was really like to work with and to work for. And it really did open up my eyes to what life was like for child stars at the time. It was also really interesting to see the relationship between Jeanette and her mother, how much of a difficult relationship that it was, how much I think her mother almost put her on a pedestal, but also the abuse in physical, emotional, financial that her mother put her through. It was a really difficult read. It was a really damning read, but it was also a really worthwhile read. These are some of the books that were so far out of my comfort zone, but that I still really, really enjoyed. Are there any books out of your comfort zone that you like to read, or any that have surprised you when you went a little bit further from home base? If you'd love to leave me a comment, but you can't think of anything that you'd like to say, then just leave me one of the scared-faced emojis. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.